Every so often, I'll wake up to an inbox full of friendly emails from people volunteering to help me do my job. The specific assistance they are offering is to meet me at some forthcoming restaurant, their stomachs empty and ready to contain at least half the menu. When I get 3 or 4 of these volunteers on the same morning, it invariably means that while I was sleeping other people were reading the advance press on an incipient opening that sounds both unusually enticing and intimidatingly expensive. The most recent rush of volunteers, it turned out, was inspired by the arrival in December of a Manhattan branch of the Beijing-based restaurant DaDong. While the Beijingese have excelled at the art of duck roasting for centuries, DaDong, I learned, is a relative newcomer, founded in the 1990s by the chef Dong Zhenxiang. At the restaurants there are 10 in Beijing and 6 in other Chinese cities, not counting casual spin-offs. The birds revolve, a dozen at a time, inside a circular wood-fueled oven that Mr. Dong has patented. The result is what some people consider Beijing's best Peking duck. This is a magical combination of words. Beijing's best Peking duck suggests a mandatory eating experience in a way that, say, Russia's best Russian dressing does not. It took me and my first corps of volunteers some time to find one another because the restaurant's address, 3 Bryant Park, implied that the entrance would be somewhere around Bryant Park. DaDong is inside a stack of glass and steel blocks that has somehow been plunked down west of the park between 42nd and 41st Streets, beside a pocket plaza that was new to me, although the skateboarders seemed to know all about it. Inside the front door was a lobby where a host stood by herself behind a desk made out of a rock. I gave her the name and she gestured toward the elevators, sending me up to the dining room on the 2nd floor. This space, designed by the hotel specialist George Wang, is the latest manifestation of modern China in Manhattan, a soothing study in straight lines and neutral tones with random outbreaks of contemporary Chinese art. A wraparound bar sits in the middle of the room under a hanging sculpture that looks like a flock of gold paper towel tubes learning to fly. In this room, it is not exactly shocking to learn that the usual Peking duck garnishes may be supplemented with 10 grams of caviar for $42. In lieu of toast points, servers recommend a shard of skin. If you skip the fish eggs, they will tell you there are 3 ways to eat the duck, wrapped in one of the very thin and tender pancakes with scallions and a smear of sweet soy black bean sauce, great stuff, poked into a round sesame puff with julienne cucumber and melon, raw garlic paste and the black bean sauce, and finally, dipped in a small pile of sugar, recommended for the skin alone. This kept everybody busy for some time. The bird was precisely carved, as if by a laser. None of us had seen crisper skin you could bounce a quarter off it. The dip didn't improve it, but it is always nice to find a new use for sugar. The meat didn't make as firm an impression. It made very little impression at all, apart from my strong sense that there ought to have been more of it. Tasted on its own, it reminded me a bit of the lean, whitish, non-committal supermarket pork chops I grew up on. Slowly, gradually, with great mental resistance but still inexorably, it dawned on me that I had paid $98 for a duck with almost no flavor. It was dry, too. New York City being a lush jungle of regulations, DaDong was forced to convert its wood-burning ovens to gas. Smoke might have added some flavor, but something seems to be lacking in the birds themselves, members of the Peking breed raised on a farm in Indiana with special instructions to keep them lean, the way Mr. Dong prefers them. Unfortunately, DaDong's problems don't end with the duck. The menu in New York has been trimmed down considerably from the 280-page book presented to diners in Beijing, but it is still rife with dishes that are dead on arrival. Kung Pao shrimp with bitcoins and raw mushrooms tasted like ketchup. Sweet and sour pork ribs with preserved plums were as sweet as if they'd been stewed in Dr. Pepper, and a dusting of powdered sugar at the table didn't help. Little teepees of Iberico ham came wrapped around cold, dry wads of sticky rice. Champagne glazed tomatoes were sweet enough to serve for dessert, and the crispy mushroom salad they were stuffed with wasn't crisp and didn't particularly taste like mushrooms. Shiny and red as candied apples, the tomatoes were at least pretty to look at. Nearly everything I ate at DaDong was. The kitchen, led by Andy Su, a veteran of Atlantic Grill and Bluefin, certainly shows attention to the details of presentation. Occasionally, it sends out something that lives up to its appearance. A perfectly clear globe of ice, to be cracked with a spoon, kept soy-marinated ribbons of geoduck deliciously cold. Braised sea cucumber in a glossy soy-based sauce hit all the right sticky and soft marks. My favorite dish may be the seafood variation on the Sichuan classic Chongqing chicken called hot and spicy lobster, a cut-up lobster stir-fried with nearly enough dried chilies to fill a pillowcase. A close second is the baby cabbage, sliced into threads and braised with chestnuts and saffron sauce. Whatever is causing the kitchen's reach-grasp ratio to break down doesn't seem to have affected the desserts. There is a fine plate of Beijing snacks, dense little half-sweet cakes made of lotus root, red beans, yellow split peas and so on. I enjoyed popping tiny seashells of white chocolate into my mouth to find out what each was filled with: nutmeg, tangerine, wasabi. The simplest, though, the ice cream with an alluringly bitter edge of dried tangerine peel, was also the most rewarding. Servers sometimes seemed to be reading dish descriptions from a teleprompter, but they made up for that with a care and attentiveness that felt unforced. The sommeliers were particularly good at interpreting the wine list, which is well-rounded and can be quite reasonable. This list would get your attention almost anywhere, but in a Chinese restaurant in New York, it's a treasure. But even the most gently priced bottle can go only so far to smooth over the potholes on the menu, and the suspicion that the best Peking duck in Beijing has turned into something that would struggle to stand out in parsippany. Follow NYT Food on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Pinterest. Get regular updates from NYT Cooking, with recipe suggestions, cooking tips, and shopping advice.